Good morning, everyone. So I apologize for the late start this morning, but the hot water took a bit of time. So I wanted to make sure anyone who wanted a cup of tea or coffee could feel very settled. Wow. I thought we'd sit with one or two friends and have a bit of a chat. How amazing to see all of you here this morning. It's interesting that going into a talk about faith, I'm probably more nervous than any of the other things that I've shared with the community. And actually preparing for this has been quite a challenge for me. Because I think that talking about faith is something that we spend our whole lives preparing for, and something that we go through different stages of through our lives. So why now? Like many of you, I'm sure, faith isn't a constant. At different times in our lives, we feel that we're pulling on our faith more. At different times in our lives, we feel more challenged by it. And for me as well, both with my personal circumstances and with things that I've been through with people I love, people in our community, faith has always been something that I've grappled with. Interestingly, that we speak about us as a people, we're called Yisrael, which means to grapple, to fight with God. That's who we are as a people. That's what we're meant to do. The idea of blind faith is not a Jewish concept at all. And I think what's interesting is in some of our Jewish education, that might have been what we were told. We were told that no matter what we believe, or no matter what, it's God's will. Now, there are concepts like that, and we will talk hopefully about things like that. But I wonder if when those were the answers we were given, it was because maybe our teachers were a bit afraid to admit that they're not sure, or they don't feel confident with the answer. But we know in Judaism, the questions are so important, right? We're coming up to Pesach, and I'm not going to be one of those people who says, don't mention we love Pesach. We all love Pesach. The preparation, maybe not so much, but we all love Pesach. And we're coming up to Pesach, and it's all about asking and challenging. And yes, we start with the Manishtana, with those kind of simple questions, but there's much deeper questions going on. The God that loved us so much put us through the hell of Egypt. What's that all about? Right? When we sit around those tables and we hear about the four sons who have really different responses to their Judaism, how do we grapple with that? So asking the questions is so important. I think sometimes as a Rebbetzen, or maybe even just as a religious person, people just assume we know all the answers. I can't know all the answers. I'm not good. But I think that what people might not realize is sometimes I ask the same questions that we all ask. And sometimes those questions really, really challenge me. And the reason that I wanted to start these series now is because actually sometimes you can't ignore that message. And sometimes you hear the same message again and again and again, and it kind of creeps into every conversation. Now, if you know, whenever you're looking for something on Facebook or on Google, and you look at something and then suddenly the very clever little elves behind the screen know how to bring that very same thing to you. You were thinking about maybe getting curtains, and then suddenly all you see is curtains. Or you were looking at, for the ladies, at a blue dress, and then suddenly all it keeps showing you is that same dress or something very, very simple. They're very clever how that happens. But there's something that happens in the universe as well, that when you're listening for something, it keeps coming up again and again and again and again. And for me, the question and the challenge of faith just keeps coming up. And it got to a point where I just can't say, okay, maybe the message is for someone else. It's too many times. As each of the hostages has been released, each in their own different way, the message that they've been sharing with us has been one of faith. Particularly, I've spoken already about, but maybe not all of you are here, but Agam Berger. This is a picture of her in her helicopter. And the words that she's written which actually someone in Israel has made into wristbands and phone covers and in her handwriting. This is kind of our slogan that we're going to focus on, which is B'derech Emunah bacharti. I chose the way of faith. V'derech Emunah shavti, and I returned in the way of faith. And we're hearing more and more the stories. And then she thanks the Todah l'kol am Yisrael. Thank you, all of Israel. V'chayalei tzahal hagiborim, and the incredible strong soldiers. Ein kamochem ba'alam. There's no one like us, like you in the whole world. There's no one like us, the Jewish people in the whole world. And then we're hearing all the amazing things that she did, whether it was being given a siddur by her captors in Gaza, keeping Yom Kippur, keeping Tanit Esther, which is coming up, and hopefully we'll talk more about Esther next week. But this idea of finding faith or tapping into faith or going in with faith is something that the messages keep coming louder and louder. And then a course that I was doing decided to start a WhatsApp group just about talking about learning a book just about faith. And then one of my friends the other day was talking to me about the fact that she's been doing some interfaith work. And during the interfaith work, one of her colleagues that she's become very close to, a very religious, educated Christian woman, was talking to her about these growth circles that they have together where they talk about God. I have a secret for you. The Christians didn't start it. Talking about God comes from us, but we don't do it. We don't talk about it enough. We talk about concepts, and we talk about, sometimes I think we talk about things that we need to use such big language and such complicated things to speak to our intellect. But actually deep down, what's really, really the root of Judaism is having a relationship with God. It's not more complicated than that. That's really where we're at. That's really what we need to work on. That's really where our focus should be. I think particularly seeing the hostages come out and hearing about their different journeys, and we'll share some of those together, has been something that's made me realize that having faith isn't something that's determined by whether you're religious or not. And having faith doesn't even necessarily always translate to which mitzvot you observe or not. Having faith is something that each of us has and can access. And I'm going to come back to that in a bit, because there's going to be the cynics in me and maybe some cynics in the room that say, I'm not sure that I do have faith, or I definitely don't have faith. And I'm going to challenge that and maybe push in a bit of a difficult direction for some people. My first challenge would be, I'm not sure why you're here this morning. There's something that's drawn you here. Anyone who's so sure that they don't have faith doesn't come to a class on faith. There's something that pulls all of us to come together. And like I said, I'm talking to the cynical part of me as well. One of the things I wasn't sure if I wanted to share, but I'm going to share. I'm not sure why. It feels like a very supportive group to be part of. But one of the things after October the 7th, and I've shared before that I really didn't follow the news, and I thank God we had such a blessing in a way that it was Shabbat and Yom Tov, and we couldn't look at what was going on. But even afterwards, I had heard enough from people to know that it wouldn't be good for me. I wanted to be able to sleep at night. I didn't want to see those images, and some of them obviously you can't avoid, and some filtered through. And yes, I did see some things, but the part of terrorism is to show us terror. So that's really, some of these messages were coming from such an evil place that actually watching them is just giving in to them. But one of the things that I really struggled with was, will we see any of them ever again? I don't know if it's okay to even say that thought out loud. I feel like now maybe I can, because I was wrong. Is it even okay to have thought that? Where's my faith? How could I think that? But it just seemed so black and so bleak. Like, is there any way? Could they ever be returned? And I think I'm a bit embarrassed that that's what I felt. But I'm just being honest, that is what I thought. Is it even possible? And why does my brain take me there? Why is that what I think? And I can tell you why. I think each one of us have had things in life that just didn't go the way that we needed it to go. Every one of us has prayed for something or hoped for something or really needed something, and then we didn't get the answer that we wanted. The answer was no. But do you know what it makes me think of? So our youngest is now 10. Take it back a few years. When I said, no, you can't have an extra chocolate bar or a chocolate bar, and they're lying on the floor and they're going, it's not fair. That's what I was doing. It's not fair. How can it be? How can you take our brothers and sisters? How can you kill so many of our people? How is it possible? And then, like I said, I've been listening and hearing, and specifically listening from the incredible people who God is testing in the most cruel way. I'm going to specifically focus on the hostages, but there's other people going through real challenging life circumstances. And then you see the faith that they find inside themselves. And I'm trying to tap into a little bit of that. That's where I am. That's what I'm trying to tap into. I know Michelle's not going to stay here for very long, but I want to specifically talk about something Michelle shared with me. Michelle's cousin, and it's a little bit sensitive because Michelle's mother Nova doesn't know about this, so it's important not to kind of say anything to her, but just to be aware that Michelle's cousin is one of the hostages in Gaza, Avinatan Ar, and his mother Dietza. Interestingly enough, her career was teaching about psychology and faith. You know, sometimes we talk about the idea that God prepares someone for a challenge. We have this concept that sometimes God prepares the remedy before he gives us the disease. This would be an example where this was literally, this is her occupation. This is what she does, this is what she teaches. And then God took her gorgeous, must be 30-year-old he was at the time. Now he's 33, 32-year-old, 31-year-old maybe. Her gorgeous son. And you'll know which one he is because his girlfriend, Noah Argamani, was the picture that we did all see on the back of the motorbike being dragged into Gaza, who, miracles of miracles, right? Where I should have had faith, she's come back. And she's been spending months in America campaigning for him to be released. And Michelle just shared with me yesterday a video of Dietza, Avinatan's mother, speaking. Oh my goodness. If you ever want a lesson in faith, listen to this woman. It's interesting because sometimes people share stories of faith. And I think particularly there's a series and a book and an ideology of, you know, you were rushing to get to the airport and you forgot your passport, or there was a traffic jam and you missed the flight, and guess what happened? Either, God forbid, the plane crashed or something terrible happened and you were saved. How amazing is that? I have faith. And those stories are incredible. But actually, I think what's even more incredible is the stories where we don't yet know the ending. And that's what Dietza said, actually, is when you don't know the ending. And she says the reason she knows it's not yet the end is because the end will be good, but we're not there yet. Now, we don't know what good looks like, but eventually the end of the story will be good. And we really don't know. I think Dietza hasn't had a sign of life since May. Not one of the hostages has come back and said that they've seen Avinatan. That's a very long time, right? It's nearly a year. But this woman has faith, and she only wants to tap into that positivity and that goodness. That's amazing. It's just amazing. And even if we look with Rachel Goldberg-Pollin, who, again, this beacon of faith, and she spoke since her son was killed. She spoke about how she's tapped into and the connection she feels with Hashem and how strong that connection is. It's unbelievable. Who am I to kind of sit here and talk about faith? But I'm sharing because there are these giants of faith who are being tested in the most cruel, difficult, challenging ways, but yet they're seeing the light and they're seeing the goodness. My understanding of faith and the way that it works. So I have a membership at a gym. I have a membership at a gym that some of you might also have a membership at, but you probably haven't seen me there in quite a few years. Maybe other people are like that. Sometimes we say Shul's a bit like a gym membership, right? It's kind of like we have that membership, but we don't always come. But you are obviously the people who come. But just because I have a membership at a gym doesn't mean that my muscles are getting any stronger. Some of you might remember I gave the explanatory service on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur last 2023. And I could hardly stand. I'd hurt my back really badly. And thank God I'm okay. When do I remember to do the exercises that the physiotherapist told me to do? Never. But when do I little bit remember? When it starts hurting again. Right? Faith is a muscle. And if we don't use that muscle, it's not very strong. And sometimes what happens is God sends us a message to remind us, you've got to do those exercises. You've got to work on your faith. And we ignore the message. And then he sends us another message, and a louder message, and a louder message, and a louder message. And that's what I feel like has happened to me now, which is why I wanted to come together to talk about faith. Because I feel like the messages are just louder and louder and louder, and I can't ignore it. Okay, it's time to do the exercises. And so I've gathered together some friends, and we're going to try and do these exercises together. We're going to together try to work on our faith. Together, we're going to try to work on making ourselves stronger in this area. I said before something that some people might have shifted or felt a little bit uncomfortable about. The idea that we each have faith. How do I know this? We are all the children of Abraham, the very first Jew. Interestingly, Abraham had 2 children, and we know that the other parts of his children also have faith, which is why Rabbi Sachs talks about the idea of this being a very ideological war that's going on, not obviously right now, but in general, right? A very famous Rabbi Sachs line is that non-Jews respect Jews who respect Judaism. Non-Jews don't respect Jews who don't respect their own religion. And Agam is a really good example where actually her captors respected her faith. It's like unheard of, it's unreal that these monsters could see in her that she had faith. So much so that when they found a siddur, they brought it to her. That doesn't make sense, right? They didn't give them food. They didn't give them light. They didn't treat them like human beings treat other human beings. They are monsters. But there was something about the fact that she had faith, that they brought her a siddur so that she could practice her faith, so that she could be connected to her faith. I was debating whether I was just going to spend today just showing you lots and lots of clips of the incredible stories, but some of you will probably have seen them. And if you haven't, if you want me to send you the videos, they are just unbelievable. But I'm going to share some other things that I've just, one of the WhatsApp groups that I'm on is called The Beauty of Our Nation. And they're sharing this inspiration, but I'm sure many of you are seeing it in different places. So just to share with you about Ohad Ben Ami, again, one of the captives, one of the hostages who was released. He said the song that Israelis are singing all over the place, Od Yoter Tov, means it's going to get better and better and better, right? It's just that our people are unbelievable, right? Which other nation has over 500 days of their loved ones in captivity, but their chant is it's going to get better and better and better? Which other nation has lost so many people so tragically, yet they still want to call out and say it's going to get better and better and better? It's always, will only be good. And that's why I think about what Dietzer said about, if it's not yet good, we're not yet at the end of the story. It's not yet at the end of the story. So Ohad Ben Ami, who had been captive for 491 days, he said, our people are a very strong people. Seemingly we come from different ends, from different countries, from different exiles. What unites us all is our faith in God. And personally, I feel that this faith sustained and saved me. And thanks to God, I am here back after captivity. He had said, he was the one who said he had made Havdalah. He didn't know how to, right? This is a complete, I want you to know that almost everyone who is in captivity are completely secular. We're not talking about United Synagogue, Cheder educated. We are talking about secular Israelis. Not everyone, but almost everyone. And yet he tried to make Havdalah to the best of his ability. And then they came and they, since that's all he wanted was he wants to be able to make Havdalah. Again, some of these stories I've shared with some of you, and you might know these stories, but it pays to repeat them. Keith Seeger also released, I think at the same time actually, or similar time. He said that while he was in captivity, he knew one bracha. Now, I'm not going to test anyone here on what your Cheder education was about, but I think you probably know more than one bracha. This is a secular Israeli, again, who knew one single bracha, and the bracha was Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. So every day when he got his tiny little piece of pita bread, he said the blessing of Hamotzi. And I heard this from an interview with him after he came back. He said while he was there, at a certain point, they had some access to Israeli television. And on the Israeli television, he heard someone describing the amazing food scenes in Tel Aviv, right? Like completely not related to anything. And they happened to mention that the blessing you say on things that are not bread, but still are grain, so biscuits, crackers, etc., is Borei Minei Mezonot. He learned this in the tunnels in Gaza, right? So from that point onwards, he starts saying, Borei Minei Mezonot. He's got two blessings now. And I shared this on Friday night, but when he came home, his family, you can imagine they're desperate to make him his favorite food, whatever he wants, that first Friday night. We can't even imagine after 16 months what we would want to do for our loved one on their first Friday night. So they asked him, Abba, what can we make you? What have you been dreaming of? And he said, I want a kippah and a cup to make kiddush. This is probably someone who never made kiddush. I'm almost sure. But this is what he wants. How does that happen? How does that happen? I think part of the way that this happens is if we think about that person who we come from. We come from Avraham. At a certain point in Avraham's life, I'm going to read from you from the Torah what it tells us. This is in Parshat Lech Lecha. If you remember, Avraham was sent from the place he lived in, told to go to the land of Israel. And then when he got there, it wasn't like life was easy. He had all the different tests. And this was already once he discovered Hashem on his own. Just unbelievable what Avram did. We speak about Avram being Avram HaIvri. Ivri means to be on the other side. The rest of the world did not believe in the idea of a God, and yet Avram did. And Avram said, after these events, Hashem tells us, the word of Hashem came to Avram in a vision, saying, fear not, Avraham. Oh, Avram, he was actually at that time. I am a shield for you. Your reward is very great. Hashem says to Avram, don't worry, don't be afraid. I am your shield. Magen Avraham. Does anyone recognize where those words come from? When do we say the shield of Abraham? Magen Avraham. And the Amidah, in that very first blessing, that's what we say is Magen Avraham. Do you know, can someone just take the thing off the hook just so it doesn't keep ringing? Thank you, Mary. Yeah, but just take off the handle, then it will stop, because I think people will be coming in and then. It's a very busy building. This is what's amazing is people can come here, then they can go to an exercise class, and they can come to lunch and learn, there's nursery, there's so many things going on.
Do you mean leave it off the hook?
Yeah. Miriam, just leave it off the hook. Yeah, then it won't ring inside. That's all, then it's less distracting. So yeah, we'll put it back after, no problem. So Magen Avraham, this idea of being a shield of Avraham. I said before this idea of sometimes I think we get too stuck in our idea of intellectual Judaism. And I think that there's an amazing place where the focus isn't on that. And that actually comes from Chassidut, the Chassidim that we see. It's much more about the feeling. Any of you who were here when the traveling Chassidim came, it's about love and light and feeling things. And I think sometimes we connect too much to our brain and we forget to connect to our heart. And the ideas that I was learning about and I'm going to share a little bit about comes from the Hasidic way of teaching. And this idea of Avram came to a point where kind of things looked okay. Things in life seemed to be all right. And that's when he got scared. Interesting. It wasn't while he was going through the challenges. It was when kind of life was a bit calm. And then he was kind of thinking to himself, I'm a bit worried when the next foot's going to drop. right? When's the next crazy idea that's going to come in? So these are just a little bit of some of the ideas that the Nesiva Shalom, who's one of these Hasidic masters, shared with us. And this is the point where Hashem says to him, don't worry, Abraham, I'm going to be your shield. I'm going to be here to help you, to protect you. I'm going to be here to be with you and to carry you. Magen Avraham, I am your shield. You don't need to be going through one of these really difficult challenges, Hashem says to Abraham, to be working on your faith. You can work on your faith all the time. And when we talk about that muscle, as a people, we are going through probably the hardest time since the Holocaust. We know that, right? This horrendous time that we're going through. But even when, please God, that we should be in a time of peace, we can continue to work on our faith. I can continue to work on our faith, on my faith, to work on these muscles. And every day we talk about this idea about being Magen Abraham. We talk about the other forefathers, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, but specifically the shield is the shield of Abraham. This idea of having faith that comes from Abraham. So what's the impact on all of us? What does that mean? There were some studies that were done on Holocaust survivors, but not just Holocaust survivors, second generation Holocaust survivors. And these are, you know that I love biology and genetics. The actual genetics of a person, of the survivors' children and grandchildren changed. The actual biology changed because of what the parents have gone through, the people who had survived. It affects, and I am kind of the granddaughter, but it actually affects our cells. Survival actually affects our cells. And I think that every single one of us comes from Abraham. So the reason that I can say with confidence that each one of us has faith is because every single one of us is descended from Abraham. Now, what might happen is we might not feel that we have faith, or we might not access that faith, or we might struggle with that faith. But remember, our name as a people is Israel, Yashael. We're meant to struggle with God. That's who we are. When we ask those really difficult, challenging questions of God, how could this happen? Why did this happen? Where was God? When we can express even our emotions that I'm angry about what's happened, I'm angry with God, does that mean we don't have faith? It doesn't. It means we have faith. We're just challenging it. We're grappling with it. We're trying to work that muscle and make it real. Dietza talks about the closeness she feels to God and the anger she feels to him. That's okay. That's okay. She's trying to channel that into really positive ways because she genuinely believes, and this is her faith, that the more positivity she can feel, that will help Avinatan. She said that her son is called Avinatan, which means God gave. Avi, my father, Natan, gave, and his surname is Ar, light. So she genuinely feels that in this fight against the darkness, Hashem has taken the person who needs to be able to help fight against it and put him into this situation because we will all become better. And he is ideally placed to help with this battle. Does this mean she would ever choose that for her son? God forbid it. Never. No one would ever choose to have pain. I bought a few different books that I will start reading through, and I'm working from it. I'm not a very quick reader, but I'm working my way through. But one of them talks, this one actually here. Someone who lost his son. He speaks about this idea of pain as a reality, suffering is a choice. None of us can avoid pain in life, right? If ever anyone's born without nerves to be able to feel pain, it's actually really dangerous. There are some people who can't feel heat. They can burn through themselves. Could you imagine, God forbid, you touch something and you don't know that you need to move your hand away? That's so dangerous. Or if you can't hear properly and you're hearing noises that are destroying, you know, your eardrums or your cells, or the sense of smell. Each one of our senses is really there to be able to tell us something. But the sense of pain is so important. If you didn't stub your toe, you wouldn't know to stop trying to drive it through whatever it is that you kind of just came across and banged into. Pain's important. It tells us how to take care of ourselves. Pain is a reality. Pain is often something that we wouldn't choose. And certain types of pain definitely are not things that we would want to choose for ourselves. But suffering is a choice. Isn't that interesting? Suffering is a choice. And I think we all know people who experience a lot of pain, but choose not to be suffering. And we know people who might experience a very little bit of pain, but choose to suffer. I met someone last night. I thought she was her mother. Her mother's very elderly. I thought she was her mother because she looks so old. And I was with my sister and she said to me, no, her mother looks younger than she. For some reason, she's really suffering. She really looks terrible because you can see she's kind of carrying the weight of the world. But her mother isn't. Her mother's kind of got this regal sense about her because suffering is a choice. And this woman's gone through a lot of pain in her life. She's not had, I mean, no one's had an easy ride, right? But she's gone through a lot of pain in her life. Suffering is a choice. So how do we work on this muscle? How do we strengthen our muscle? That's what we're really going to be doing together here. Whoever wants to come and join on this journey, you're going to help me working on my muscles. Maybe eventually we'll get to the gym as well. I think the point is to look for messages around us. Like I said to you, when you're looking for that blue dress, when you're looking for those new curtains, you keep seeing them. God, now we know that's an algorithm, right? We know that there's very clever technology that drives us all mad and knows exactly what we want and is there to really, like I said, drive us mad. Even, if you're looking at something in Amazon and then suddenly it comes up in every other thing we're looking for. So we know that that's marketing genius, but they're really using us as kind of pawns. But God created a world where he wants us to recognize him in it. And he's giving us messages all the time. I'm going to just share 2 messages that I got yesterday. Because I'm trying to look out for them. I think that those messages are there all the time. We know that those messages are there all the time, but we need to keep listening out for them. Actually, one's from yesterday, and one's from a while before. So the reason I was looking for my coat was because yesterday I went to visit a friend of mine. Now, on this pen, it says, every heartbeat is a miracle. And it says the same on this heart. Some of you might remember. I can't remember when it was. That Hannah Hughes, who was the Rebbetzen in Radlett, had a massive cardiac issue. She's a few years older than me. She was at home. I'm trying to remember when it was. I don't know. I don't know if anyone remembers, but it was really very, very dangerous. I think it was on a Shabbat or on a Yom Tov maybe, and her kids were at home, and they started giving her CPR, and they called Hatzalah, and Hatzalah said that the likelihood of her surviving was tiny, and her specialist that she saw later said it was beyond tiny, like I think less than 5% likelihood to survive. And her kids are my kids' age, so teenagers were at home, were giving her CPR, and they saved her life. And since then, she's had a massive surgery, and thank God she's okay. So she made this Sudas Hadar, which means a thank you event in her home, and she just asked people to come. It was yesterday afternoon. She asked people to put her friends to pop in. People have been praying for her around the clock, and thank God she's okay. And this is what she said: take a pen. Every heartbeat is a miracle. What's incredible about this story is that I'm not sure if she'd done some training or for some reason, 2 days beforehand, she decided to teach her children how to do CPR. Even as I'm saying it, I've got shivers. What is that? Like, where does that come from? To 2 days before she needed it herself, she decided to teach her children how to do CPR. It's just beyond. And her message to us is that every heartbeat is a miracle. So I'm going to ask everyone to put your hand on your heart. Can you feel those miracles? And that's going to keep going the whole day for you, please, God. Every single heartbeat. I guess the other part from yesterday, I'll say, is that I woke up in the morning and I opened my eyes and I could see. And the sun was shining. How lucky are we? So to work on these muscles, all we need to do is to look for things where we can see God in our lives. And I want to be really clear that it's not just about the story where she taught her kids CPR 2 days beforehand. Sometimes the story is going to be this and this and this happened to me, and I don't know why. I missed my flight, and I don't know why. I'll give you another example. One of our kids was in a very minor car crash. Thank God, very minor. I don't know why. There must be a message for him. It happened for a reason. One of the inspirations behind doing this talk is a rabbi in America called Rabbi Ephraim Goldberg, who has a wonderful community in Boca Raton, but really he has a reach all around the world. He's got a lot of online things, and I was listening to some of his classes online, and he runs a weekly class on living with faith. So I kind of, again, it's one of those things I knew about. I really should start listening to it. I really should. So I'm like, let's just do it. We're going to do it. And what he does is he starts each session by reading out emails. And this is where I'm going to ask all of you. Let's start writing when we can see something that happened that we're grateful for, or when we can see God's hand in our life. Jacqueline at bushyus.org. I'd love to see some emails. It doesn't have to be a happily ever after story. And what I'll do is, if you want it to be anonymous, I'll anonymize it. But it would be lovely to start our sessions together. Let's read out something that happened to us this week where we saw God's hand. I'm going to end with two other quotes or two other things to share. It's funny because when I started, I didn't know if I'd have enough to say. And now I feel like there's so many more things. I'm just going to end with the first one is Johnny Daniels has been this incredible beacon of light and stability and hope during this time. I believe he is religious. I think he doesn't post on Shabbat. Someone else posts for him, but he's not a rabbi. I don't know how many people follow him, but he's just got this calming way that good will win. We will be okay in the end. And he's not ignoring the fact that, he posts about everything that's happening, but in a very measured way. So this was shared, I think, on the day when Shiri and Kfir and Ariel were returned. Today is an incredibly difficult day. So many of us held on to the hope that somehow a miracle would bring Shiri and the boys back to us, but it was not meant to be. God had other plans for them. He wanted his angels close. On this day, we hold our loved ones a little closer, feeling the weight of sorrow and loss. And yet, even in the midst of heartbreak, we must remember that hope is never truly lost. As a people, we have always clung to even the smallest glimmer of hope, refusing to let go. This resilience is our strength. It is what defines us. With heavy hearts and tears in our eyes, we lift our heads, carry that hope forward, and take the next step, no matter how difficult. We keep moving forward. I think that probably was the kind of final impetus we have to start. And actually, that's why I started this week and not next week. the Bibas family was that one family that we desperately held hope onto. And you should think that therefore them returning not alive and being buried would mean that talking about faith would now be harder than ever. But actually it felt more urgent than ever. In their merit, we need to talk about faith. Yarden, the husband, spoke about how in captivity, his captors, the monsters, said to him that he should convert. And he said to them, I was born a Jew and I will die a Jew. And this is someone who was told that his family had been killed. But yet, being Jewish and holding on to his faith is the most important thing for him. I feel like in the merit of the souls of those precious people that we've lost, and we owe it to those who are still there, that this is something that we as a community, our little community here, I thought 3 people, but obviously many more of that, who wanted to come together to learn about faith and to work on faith. And actually what we're going to talk about together isn't anything that's mind-blowing. I don't have the answers, but it's something that is in our genetics. Inside every single one of us is this idea of faith. Normally when I run a discussion group, it's something that's very interactive. And this hasn't been, because I've been sharing with you. And I'm not sure that it's going to be very interactive, but I would really like us to use those emails as a chance to be able to discuss further. Okay. I'd like us to use the emails as a way to discuss further, or to share what our thoughts are on faith, because I think everyone in this room has probably real knowledge and real strong feelings about this subject, because it's inside each of us. And if you don't think you have faith, that's okay, because I believe in you and God believes in you, and God believes in that bright shining light inside each of you. And how do we, even if you don't think it's there, He knows it's there. It's okay. We just need to work those muscles a bit harder. Please God, we're going to meet again next week. We're going to talk about faith connected to Purim. One of the things that I think would be really lovely, and again, I've seen this from Rabbi Goldberg's series that he does in America, is if anyone would like to sponsor the learning that we do together in the merit of a loved one, or as a refuah shalema, as a merit for someone to have a recovery, or for a specific miracle that someone's praying for, or to see God's helping hand in their life. I'm happy that, I think it would be lovely to be able to do our learning in the merit of someone, or for a special birthday or special anniversary, anything like that. So if that is something that you would like to sponsor, I don't know if people ate lots of the cookies and the things that we bought, so we can decide what kind of, if it needs the food or if it's just about the drinks and the coffee and the teas together. But just that we can learn in memory of someone, or in the merit of something special for someone. Let's try to use this time together. And I'd love to hear feedback or any thoughts that you have, or anything that you would like specifically to be learning about. But today was really just about me sharing with you in a very honest and open way about something that I need to work on. So thank you for coming together with me for our very first Emunah exercise class together. And please God, we will be meeting almost every Monday. If we're not, I'll let you know. But almost every Monday morning together, we'll be meeting together, and we can continue our discussion. We'll continue learning together. I hope that we can all try to find God in our life today and tomorrow and the next day. And I wish you all much hatzlacha, much success in being able to find God in your life, because what I can see from the people who have done that, they just seem like happier, stronger people. And it's not because they don't have any pain, or it's not because they don't have any challenges in their life, but they just seem to be, they're walking a happier path. I think it would be really useful if we can make a WhatsApp group. So I'd like everyone to write their names down. We'll try not to have it as a massive chattering kind of group, but if you want me to share any of the resources that I've said, or if you want to watch one of the videos of specifically Disa, then I'll put that on there as well. Thank you everyone for joining this experiment. Have a wonderful day.